I'd like to tell you just one story. It's hard for me to not tell you many stories, but when I was working, actually, I wrote a devotional book. It's called Living Hope for the End of Days. It's my dissertation from Dallas Seminary about the book of Revelation. I worked on that for 10 years in class at Dallas Seminary, and then I worked on it for one more year, editing it for publication. And I edited it at Starbucks. I was pastoring in a town in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I went to the same Starbucks in Tulsa and edited the manuscript every day on my lunch hour for months. As I would go there, I started getting to know, going every day for lunch, the baristas. And I'll never forget that there was one barista. As the weeks went by, I noticed something was happening to them. I would look at their eyes when they would smile at me and push the cup of coffee across, and I noticed that this fella's eyes, his name was Daniel, were slowly turning yellow, and finally the whites of his eyes actually had turned orange. Well, I knew enough medically that I had seen once one of our children had what's called hyperbilirubinemia. It meant their liver wasn't functioning and their eyes had started turning orange. And we rushed them to ICU, and they were in there for a weekend, and they were able to fix that problem. But for Daniel, it wasn't he was a baby. I knew what it was. He was overdosing. And so I started getting convicted. Remember, I told you in the first class that I always keep that track in my wallet. And by the way, Daniel was quite a character. He was into this metal thing. He wore a kind of M&M kind of hat, you know, ski cap. I can't believe they let him do that at Starbucks. He had piercings everywhere. He had piercings through all of his ears, through his nose, through his tongue, through his cheeks. He wore chains all around everywhere. He even had metal studs on his pants. He even had metal studs on his shoes. He wore a chain around his waist. He clinked when he walked. I mean, he was a fun kind of guy, unforgettable. But I could tell he was dying. So I said, Lord, I'd like to share my track I carry with me. I'm praying that you give me an appointment with Daniel. By the way, that Starbucks was the busiest one in town. I'd never been to that Starbucks when there wasn't a line. I counted once 25 people in front of me in line. So I said, Lord, you want me to witness to Daniel? I don't want to do it on company time. No line. When I get there, no line. Every day I'd go there, there are 25 in line. That day, I stepped as the 25th person. I walked through the line, and it started to get eerie because no one came through the door, and I came up and ordered, and I knew I had to get my track out because no one came in behind me. And I got the track ready, and when Daniel prepared my drink as a barista, he shoved it across the counter toward me. And I looked at him, I said, Daniel, and he looked at me that I knew his name, and he smiled, he said, yes. I said, Daniel, I'm seeing your eyes, they're turning orange. I said, you're overdosing on something. Alcohol, drugs, I don't know what it is. But this is what I know. And I took the track and I said, one of these days you're going to wake up in a place you don't want to be. You're going to wake up totally separated from God in hell. This is the good news of the gospel. And I pushed it across to him. Those orange eyes got this wide. I'd never seen anybody react like that. His eyes got wide. He said, hey man, thanks. And he took the track, stuck it in his pocket. I went off and edited. I came back the next day to follow up and talk to him. He wasn't there. I didn't think anything of it. Next day, a week went by. Finally, I asked the person at the counter or at the cash register, I said, hey, where's Daniel? She said, that's what we're all asking. Where's Daniel? She said, 1 week ago, he walked out the back door. He's never walked back in. I looked at my watch and I thought, 1 week ago. That was when I witnessed to him. Well, to make a long story short, I finished writing that book, finished editing. I was there just kind of like a reunion, going back to Starbucks about 6 months later. And I was studying at my table when I heard clink, clink, clink. And I saw the black boots and the metal and the pants and the chains. And I looked up, and there was the biggest smile. There was Daniel with big eyes looking at me, and they weren't orange anymore. And he was so happy, and he said, hey man, I've been looking for you for months. He said, do you remember when you gave me that track? I said, I'll never forget it. He said, you scared the hell out of me. He said, you didn't explain it to me. He said, I walked right out the back door. After I asked all the employees if they understood it, he said, I walked down the street till I found someone that explained this gospel tract to me. He said, I got saved. He told me that in the months since, he joined a band. He was traveling the country, and they would stop their heavy metal, black, whatever concert with all the smoke, and he'd walk out on the stage, and he shared his testimony. He said, I wanted you to know that that's the power of the gospel. Look at the slide. We're each called to offer Christ's greatest miracle to our generation. Are you obeying Christ's last words to his church? Are you doing what he asked you to do? Are you acting like you're a special force soldier? Are you acting like the commanding officer and you're going to his briefings and obeying him? That's what Jesus Christ unleashed did for each of us. He wants to go with us through life. He wants us to dispense the gospel. And that's the second lesson of the book of Revelation. God bless you, not merely to be hearers, but let's do what God's word says.